These are the 5 lies about your age that, according to St. John Paul II, are working against the prayers and blessings of Catholic women who believe them without knowing it. And you are going to see the difference between the 5th and deadliest lie about your age, then the 4th lie, then the 3rd, then the 2nd, all the way down to the 1st, the one that is probably already blocking your prayer life right now. The lie that you are too old to receive a new mission from God. You have been told this lie so many times that you no longer question it. You assume that God assigns missions to the young and asks the elderly only to pray and wait. Pope John Paul II wrote in his letter to the elderly that every stage of life carries a specific mission that can be fulfilled by no one else, and that the belief that age disqualifies you from receiving new assignments from God directly contradicts the way God has worked through his saints. Margaret Walsh, 73, from Pennsylvania, believed for 8 years that her time of active service had passed, until a priest shared what Pope John Paul II had written about the missions God assigns specifically to those who have suffered long enough to understand his mercy. Within 11 days of accepting that her age did not disqualify her, she received clarity on a mission she had been trying to hear for years. The lie that your age has made you irrelevant to God's plan is the first thing working against what you have been praying for. Later in this video, we have the 3rd lie about your age, the 4th lie about your age, and the 5th and deadliest lie about your age according to St. John Paul II. And now, the 2nd lie about your age. The lie that your suffering is only preparation for death instead of preparation for mission. You have been taught to view your physical pain, your loneliness, your limitations, as signs that God is preparing you to leave this world. Pope John Paul II wrote the opposite in Salvifici Doloris. He documented that suffering in the final decades of life is not the end of mission, but the purification required for the most important mission, the one that can only be carried by someone who has endured enough to understand the depth of Christ's suffering on the cross. He wrote that those who bear prolonged suffering without bitterness carry an authority in prayer that the comfortable will never possess. Dorothy Simmons, 68, from Ohio, spent 9 years interpreting her chronic pain as God's way of telling her to step back from everything she had been doing. She told her daughter, "I think God is just getting me ready to go home." Her daughter asked her to read Salvifici Doloris. Within 3 weeks, Dorothy realized her suffering had not been closing doors, but opening one specific door she had been too afraid to walk through. She began a prayer ministry for families affected by addiction. Within 6 months, 12 families in her parish had experienced breakthroughs they had been praying for without success for years. The lie that your suffering means God is finished with you is the 2nd thing working against everything you have been asking Him for. Later in this video, we have the 4th lie about your age and the 5th and deadliest lie about your age according to St. John Paul II. And now, the 3rd lie about your age. The lie that your past disqualifies you from the mission God is offering you now. You believe that because of something you did decades ago, because of a choice you made when you were younger, because of a sin you confessed but still carry, God will not assign you a mission that requires moral authority. St. John Paul II survived an assassination attempt in 1981. He forgave his attacker. He visited him in prison. He wrote extensively about how mercy does not erase the past, but transforms it into the exact credential required for the mission God has been preparing. He wrote that the saints who carried the greatest missions were not those who had lived without failure, but those who had experienced the depth of God's mercy after failure, and could therefore speak about that mercy with an authority no one else possessed. In his apostolic letter, Novo Millennio Ineunte, he wrote that the Church in the new millennium would need witnesses who had been forgiven much, because only they could reach the people who believed they had gone too far to return. You have believed the opposite. You have believed that your past makes you unqualified. That belief is the 3rd lie working against the mission God has been trying to assign you for years. Helen Carter, 71, from Michigan, had an abortion when she was 19. She confessed it. She received absolution. But for 52 years, she believed that God would never ask her to do anything public, anything visible, anything that required her to speak about faith or family. She told her pastor, "I can pray, but I cannot lead." God would not use someone like me for that. Her pastor asked her to read what Pope John Paul II had written about the women he had met who had experienced abortion and had become the most powerful witnesses to the sanctity of life precisely because they understood the cost of its loss. Helen began speaking at a pro-life ministry. She did not hide her past. She shared it. In the first year, 63 women came to her after Mass, in parking lots, in quiet hallways, women who had carried the same shame for decades and had never heard anyone say out loud that God's mercy was deeper than their worst choice. 4 of those women returned to confession after more than 30 years away. The lie that your past disqualifies you is the third thing blocking the mission God has been preparing you to carry right now, and the fifth and deadliest lie about your age, according to St. John Paul II, is coming. And now, the fourth lie about your age. The lie that you are too tired to do what God is asking you to do. You feel the exhaustion in your body. You wake up tired. You go to bed tired. You look at what you used to be able to do, and you believe that the gap between your current energy and the mission God seems to be placing in front of you is proof that you are hearing it wrong. St. John Paul II carried the papacy through his final years while suffering from Parkinson's disease. His hands shook. His voice weakened. He could not walk without assistance. He refused to resign. He wrote in his meditation on the luminous mysteries of the Rosary that physical weakness does not diminish spiritual authority. It purifies it, because it forces the person carrying the mission to depend entirely on God's strength instead of their own. He wrote that when a mission is truly from God, He provides the strength to complete it in ways that cannot be explained by human capacity, and that those who wait for their own strength to return before obeying will wait forever. Because God does not restore the old strength, He gives a new strength that operates through weakness instead of around it. You have been waiting to feel stronger before you act. You have been praying for energy. You have been asking God to give you back what you used to have. That is the fourth lie. God is not restoring your old strength because the mission He is offering you now requires you to depend on Him in a way you never did when you were young and capable. Barbara Thornton, 69, from Texas, had been praying for 7 years about a specific calling she felt in her heart. She wanted to start a ministry for widows in her parish. Every time she considered it, she thought about her fatigue, her arthritis, the fact that she could not drive at night anymore, the fact that she did not have the energy she used to have when she ran a women's Bible study in her 40s. She told her spiritual director, "I think I am hearing God wrong. I think this calling was for someone else, or for a younger version of me. I just do not have what it takes anymore." Her spiritual director gave her a homily Pope John Paul II had delivered in 1998 about the Apostle Paul, who wrote that God's power is made perfect in weakness. He asked her, "Have you considered that God is not asking you to do this in your own strength?" Barbara started the Widows Ministry. She scheduled meetings in the early afternoon instead of the evening. She asked other women to drive. She admitted in the very first meeting that she was too tired to carry the ministry alone, and that if it was going to work, every woman there would have to share the responsibility. 17 widows came to the first meeting. Barbara opened by saying, "I do not have the energy to do this by myself. I am only here because I believe God asked me to start it, and if He asked me, then He will provide what I do not have." By the end of the first year, the widows' ministry had grown to 32 women. 5 of them had been away from the sacraments for more than a decade. 3 of them reconciled with estranged children. One of them, who had been suicidal, told Barbara, "You saved my life by admitting you were too weak to do this alone, because that is exactly how I feel. And if God can use you like that, maybe He has not given up on me either." Barbara is 73 now. The ministry is still meeting. She is still tired. But she no longer interprets her tiredness as a sign that she misheard God. She interprets it as the exact condition God knew she would be in when He assigned her this mission, because it forces her to trust Him instead of herself. A second woman, Louise Bennett, 67, from Virginia, felt called to visit homebound parishioners, but believed she was too exhausted to commit to a schedule. She read Pope John Paul II's letter on the meaning of suffering and realized her exhaustion was not disqualifying her. It was connecting her to the people she was being sent to serve. She began visiting one person per week. In 9 months, she had reconnected 11 isolated Catholics to the parish. If you recognize this lie in your own life, if you have been waiting to feel stronger before you obey what God has been asking you to do, say out loud before you go to sleep tonight, "I recognize that my tiredness is not proof that I am hearing God wrong." And if you can identify one specific thing God has been asking you to do, that you have been delaying because you do not feel strong enough, write it down tonight, not as something you will do someday, but as something you are committing to begin this week in whatever limited capacity you currently possess. The mission is not waiting for your strength to return. The mission is waiting for your obedience to begin. Pope John Paul II obeyed through weakness, through trembling hands, through a body that could barely stand, and he completed everything God assigned him. The lie that you are too tired is the fourth thing standing between you and the mission God has been trying to give you for years. You have been told 4 lies so far. The lie that you are too old to receive a new mission. The lie that your suffering is only preparation for death. The lie that your past disqualifies you. The lie that you are too tired. But none of those 4 lies has done as much damage as the one you are about to hear. And now, the 5th and deadliest lie about your age, according to St. John Paul II. The lie that it is too late to fulfill your personal mission from God. This is not the same as being told you are too old. This lie is deeper. It tells you that you had a mission, that God assigned it to you decades ago, and that you missed it. You did not refuse it. You did not reject it. You simply did not recognize it in time. And now the window has closed. Now it is too late. The mission was for another season of your life, and that season is over. You will never get it back. You can still pray. You can still go to Mass. You can still serve in small ways. But the thing God specifically created you to do, the mission that carried your name, the one that only you could have completed, that mission is gone. You missed it. And nothing you do now will ever replace it. St. John Paul II wrote about this exact lie in his letter to the elderly in 1999. He wrote that one of the greatest spiritual dangers facing those in the final decades of life is the belief that the mission God assigned them has already passed, and that they are now living in a prolonged epilogue with no purpose except to wait. He called this belief a form of spiritual despair, disguised as humility. He wrote that God does not operate on human timelines, and that the mission he assigns to a soul in the 7th or 8th decade of life is often the mission that required every single year of preparation that came before it. He wrote that some missions can only be fulfilled by those who have lived long enough to understand what the young cannot yet see. He wrote this as a man in his late 70s, suffering physically, unable to do many of the things he had done in his younger years, and yet convinced that the mission God had given him in that season was not less important than the mission of his youth, but more important because it required a depth of suffering and perseverance that his earlier years had not yet formed in him. You have believed the opposite. You have believed that your most important years are behind you. You have believed that if you had a mission, you would have recognized it by now. You have believed that the silence you feel when you pray is God's way of telling you that your time of active service is over. Patricia Lawson, 74, from North Carolina, believed this lie for 12 years. She had felt a calling in her early 60s to write about her experience of losing her husband and finding God's presence in the grief. She started writing. She filled 3 notebooks. Then she stopped. She told herself she was too old to be a writer. She told herself that if God had really wanted her to write, He would have given her that mission when she was younger, when she had more time, when her hands did not ache, when she could think more clearly. She put the notebooks in a drawer. She did not throw them away, but she did not look at them either. For 12 years, every time she prayed, she felt a weight she could not name. She confessed regularly. She went to daily Mass. She prayed the rosary every morning, but the weight did not lift. She told her confessor, "I feel like I am doing everything right, but God feels far away. I do not know what I am missing." Her confessor asked her if there was anything she had felt called to do that she had never completed. She hesitated. Then she said, "I used to write, but I am too old for that now." Her confessor gave her a copy of Pope John Paul II's letter to the elderly and told her to read the section on mission. Patricia read it that night. She read the part where he wrote that the belief that it is too late is not a message from God, but a lie from the enemy, designed to prevent the exact mission God is preparing to release through someone who has finally lived long enough to carry it with the authority it requires. She opened the drawer. She took out the notebooks. She read what she had written 12 years earlier. She started writing again, not to publish, not to build a platform, just to obey. Within 6 weeks, a woman from her parish asked her if she had ever written anything about grief. Patricia gave her the notebooks. The woman read them. She shared them with her sister, who had just lost her husband and had stopped going to Mass because she believed God had abandoned her. The sister read Patricia's words. She came back to confession. She came back to Mass. She told Patricia, "I thought I was the only one who felt this way. I thought God had forgotten me. Reading what you wrote made me realize He was with me the whole time. I just could not see it." Patricia is 76 now. She has shared her writing with 19 women. 8 of them had been away from the sacraments. All 8 have returned. She told her confessor 6 months ago, "I spent 12 years believing I had missed my mission. I did not miss it. I was just not ready yet. God was not silent. I was just not listening." Patricia's voice broke when she said this, not because she was sad, but because she finally understood that the 12 years she thought she had wasted were actually the 12 years God had been preparing her to write with the kind of authority that only comes from prolonged suffering without bitterness. You are holding this lie right now. You believe it is too late. You believe the mission passed you by. You believe that if God had really wanted you to do something specific, He would have made it clear by now. That belief is the 5th and deadliest lie about your age, according to St. John Paul II. It is deadliest not because it makes you reject God, but because it makes you accept a version of your life that is smaller than the one He is still offering you. The mission God is giving you now is not the mission you missed. It is the mission you are finally ready to receive. Every year of waiting, every year of suffering, every year of feeling forgotten has been the preparation required for you to carry it without losing yourself in pride or collapsing under the weight of it. Pope John Paul II wrote that the missions God assigns in the final decades of life are often quiet, hidden, and unrecognized by the world, but they carry eternal consequences that will not be fully understood until heaven. He wrote that the woman who prays for her family every day without seeing results is participating in spiritual warfare that is protecting her children and grandchildren from dangers they will never know they were spared from. He wrote that the woman who offers her suffering in union with Christ's suffering on the cross is releasing graces into the world that are answering prayers being prayed by people she will never meet. He wrote that the woman who obeys one small, quiet mission from God in her 70s may be completing the one thing that was holding back a breakthrough in someone else's life. You have not missed your mission. You are living it right now. The lie that it is too late is the only thing standing between you and the fullness of what God has been preparing you to do. Scripture says in Joel chapter 2, verse 28, "I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions." God does not stop pouring out His Spirit when you reach a certain age. He does not stop assigning dreams when your hair turns gray. The mission He is giving you now requires the exact age you are, the exact suffering you have endured, the exact limitations you are carrying, because those limitations are what make you depend entirely on Him. That dependence is what makes the mission powerful. If you have believed the lie that you are too old to receive a new mission from God, verify tonight whether you have been dismissing something He has been asking you to do, simply because you assumed your age disqualified you. If you have believed the lie that your suffering is only preparation for death, remove from your prayer life the assumption that pain means God is finished with you, and ask Him instead what He is purifying you to carry. If you have believed the lie that your past disqualifies you, verify whether shame over something you confessed decades ago has been preventing you from stepping into a mission that requires you to speak about God's mercy with the authority of someone who has experienced it. If you have believed the lie that you are too tired, begin the mission tonight in whatever limited capacity you currently possess, trusting that God will provide the strength you do not have. If you have believed the lie that it is too late to fulfill your personal mission from God, ask Him tonight to show you whether the mission you thought you missed is actually the mission you are finally ready to receive. Pope John Paul II obeyed God through suffering, through physical weakness, through the limitations of age, and he fulfilled every single thing God assigned him, not in spite of his age, but because of it. Before you go to sleep tonight, ask God to show you the one mission He has been trying to assign you that you have been refusing because you believed one of these 5 lies. Do not wait until you feel younger. Do not wait until you feel stronger. Do not wait until your past feels more distant, or your suffering feels lighter. Verify tonight whether the silence you have been interpreting as God's absence is actually His way of waiting for you to stop believing the lies that have been blocking the mission He has been holding for you this entire time. St. John Paul II prayed through darkness. He prayed through pain. He prayed through the physical limitations that come with age. And he wrote that the prayers of the elderly carry a power the young do not yet possess, because they are prayed by people who have lived long enough to know that God is faithful even when He is silent. If you commit tonight to rejecting the lie that it is too late, write down the one thing you have been avoiding because you believed your age disqualified you, and commit to taking one step toward it this week, no matter how small. That commitment is not about what you will accomplish. It is about what you will allow God to accomplish through you when you finally stop believing the lies that have been keeping you from His will. If you know a Catholic woman in your life who has been praying faithfully for years but believes her age has disqualified her from the mission God is trying to give her, share this video with her tonight. If you know a daughter or granddaughter who assumes that the women in her family who are over 65 have nothing left to offer except prayers and presents, share this with her so she understands that the mission God assigns in the final decades of life is often the most important mission of all. If you know a friend whose family has been struggling and who has been praying without seeing results and who believes it is too late for God to use her in a powerful way, send this to her right now. Sharing this is not about the video. It is about passing the truth to someone who needs to hear it before she spends another year believing the lie that her time has passed. May the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit bless your home and your prayer life and remove from your heart every lie that has been standing between you and the mission He has been preparing you to carry. May St. John Paul II, who obeyed God through suffering and weakness and age, intercede for you tonight as you take the first step toward the mission you thought you had missed, but have actually been preparing for your entire life. When you remove the lie that it is too late, you do not recover something you lost. You receive something God has been holding for you until you were finally ready to carry it without breaking. You are ready now.